I've already got a very limited model for on the wing. I'm going to do this. I have a bunch of skills for working with UML-based software models, and I'm going to go through this thing in a very kind of deliberate way and build up this model using the AI tool. Let's launch one. So does MCP? Yeah, so anti-gravity has access to the Axminster tool. Let's just use that for this purpose. The first thing I'm going to do is actually work out what the use cases are for this subscription thing. So I'm going to try and write, and I was hoping I would get a chance to do this before we went live, but I'm going to type it in front of you. I'm going to write the specification and get the model to A, work out whether it's ambiguous or not, and B, actually generate use cases that we can use as a basis for this UML thing. Like I say, this is payment. This is the app going from Graham is dicking about with some web objects on the internet to Graham is trying to take money from people. So I do want to kind of get this this implementation solid. So, and we're going to take a very 1990s approach to it. So I have a use case analyzer skill. All of my UML skills previously used plant UML and just got the model to generate plant UML diagrams. Those weren't necessarily semantically consistent, and actually the models weren't necessarily very good even at generating syntactically consistent files. So they would often you couldn't generate a diagram from them. Well, Axminster works only allows semantically valid changes. So all of the tools that the Clanker has access to, all of the controls that I have in the GUI require that the model go from a valid state to a valid state. So we're guaranteed to generate a valid model of the software that we want to create. That in itself is to replace vibes with tools pattern. That in itself is a really powerful extension. So we're kind of preloading the idea that it should use the disclose ambiguity pattern. Okay, so what I'm saying is that they subscribe using either a monthly or annual subscription, that the subscription starts from the time the payment is accepted. They can cancel at any time. The subscription ends at the point that their existing payment expires, and that the feature that's unlocked is unlimited loading. So I have looked into choices. This app, let's have a quick look at the source. It uses Firebase for authentication, and therefore for user management, and it also uses Firebase storage for photos. So somewhere around here there is a photo storage mover. It uses Google Cloud storage through Firebase, and it uses the Firebase SQL Connect Postgres database as the data store, because it's using Enterprise Objects Framework, which is a SQL library. Rather than use Firebase Cloud Storage, I use Firebase SQL Connect and get a SQL database. What all of that means is that why don't I use Firebase payment processing? Well, Firebase doesn't have payment processing, but Firebase does have an extension that provides a Stripe integration. That extension assumes that you use Firebase Cloud Storage to manage your user objects, entities in your database, which I don't. So I have to implement a payment provider myself, from almost from raw keycaps, from robotically constructed keycaps in this case. I have to just use the payment provider's API, and I've chosen Stripe because it's quite a commonly used one. It works pretty well. So here's the first step is just list all of the things that people can do, and also write out kind of instructions that explain both to me and to the clanker what it means when people do them. So here we've got you already can add observations. It's through a use case called, or rather, it's through a page called capture. So it's this web objects component. So I will change that one before we move forward, just to keep them in sync, because I think in the model it's called capture observation as well. So we'll make sure that is kept in sync. We can subscribe to premium, and it's correctly identified that there's precondition. You have to be on the free tier to subscribe, and post condition is that you're on the premium tier. Vice versa, you can only cancel if you're on the premium tier, and when you cancelled, you revert to the free tier. And it's got these questions that are ambiguities, and now it's asking me about them. So here we are using the disclose ambiguity pattern. I think it makes sense to only put people back to the free tier, not to make it worse than being free. And I've already got that 50 uploads limit in code as the total number of photos. And you can see that it's updated that. So actually, only 2 new use cases: subscribe and cancel. Those have alternate flows, but there's not as much complexity in this feature as I thought. So now we'll keep the model up to date. We should see this happening live because Axminster has change tracking. So we've got payment processor actor. We've got the 2 new use cases. That's now a bit difficult to follow in the GUI, so that's a bug for me for later, is to make that clearer. But you can see that the payment processor is associated with the subscribe to premium, but it isn't associated with cancel premium. So let me use the just ask pattern to find out whether that is expected or not. Right, and it's decided it should be. That sounds logical. Nice. So the next thing that I want to do, I want to ensure that I understand the kind of the workflow involved with these use cases. So I want to ensure that I understand what the observer, who is the user of my app, does, what the payment processor does, how they all communicate through the system. So that's a sequence diagram, and it's got this create sequence diagram like tool in the Axminster MCP server, and it's got a sequence diagram skill that tells it how to use that. So actually we can watch it building this by switching to that diagram. And, I mean, this is like, even when I kind of draw box and arrow diagrams on a whiteboard or in freeform or whatever, this is a diagram type that I particularly like because it helps to understand the sequencing of different activities and to understand what's involved at every point. So, like, presenting subscription options, I hadn't thought of. I don't think there are going to be more than one option, but like, I need to think about that now. I need to go through analysing this use case. Of course, there's the monthly rate and there's the annual rate. So it's absolutely correct that it would present options. I can see that validating the payment and confirming the payment goes out to the payment processor, so that's the point where that's involved. And we've got the cancel, which just goes out to payment processor, gets confirmation, shows it to the user. So that's great. We've got quite a lot of detail here now. Let's carry on using Axminster just to kind of show it off a bit. So the other types of diagrams we can create are class diagrams, state machines, components, and activities. I am going to just generate the class diagrams for these and make sure that it integrates its model with the existing classes in the app. Once I've got that, I'm fairly confident that we will be going towards a working solution. So we'll be able to jump into code at that point. So this is the first point where we're kind of integrating this model with the code. If you're using like a kind of old school software modeling tool, this would be like a round trip feature, which is the kind of thing that you pay the most money for when you use those tools, and it kind of parses all the source. Because we've got a clanker available, we can read the source. So possibly I missed something in updating my skills that have made it. They've made it try to use plant URL instead of Axminster here. This class diagram, we've got the observer, we've got the payment processor. And you can see all of the elements and relationships at a glance here. I'm not entirely sure that this is right. I'm wondering whether this should be filtered to only the diagram canvas that you're currently looking at, or whether it should be sort of structured in a sort of browser view somehow, outline view, so that you can see which ones are relevant to which context. I'd love to have feedback from people on this, but the app isn't quite ready for beta yet, so that's why we're still discovering these issues. Okay, so we've got the observer class, we've got the payment processor class, and the diagrams. Sweet. The last thing I'm going to do is get it to add constraints to the model so that we've got clear definition of things like you can only use the subscribe to premium method if you are not currently premium. You can only cancel if you are premium. And there is a constrainer for that. So the idea of doing this is that the model encodes without encoding any of the kind of how, without like having any of the implementation details of the product. It has as much logic as possible about what the product does, so that when we convert this into source, we keep all of that logic and then just add the specific instructions. And it's interesting that the LLM has discovered that these elements exist in a global namespace. So this observer and this observer were ambiguous. Now that is possibly a bug, that maybe the MCP tools should be more specific, and you should be able to say add a constraint to this class rather than add a constraint to this element, or it could be the correct way to do it, and you need to have every element it has a distinct name. I think it's more likely that I want to be able to have colliding names, that the class observer represents the actor observer, the class payment processor represents the actor payment processor. They should have the same name. That is what object-oriented modeling is all about. So I do think that that's a bug for later, and I'm going to write this down the old-fashioned way. That's the defer the details pattern in the pattern catalog. I could go in and fix that bug in Axminster, but then I would not make any progress on my payment feature. I want to make progress on my payment feature, so I'm just going to leave that bug aside for a moment. So now let's see so the constraints are that when you subscribe to premium, you have to not already be a premium member, and afterwards you should be a premium member, and if you cancel, you have to be a premium member. And there is no post condition on that, because you might instantly become a free member if you cancel at the time that your subscription is due for renewal, or you might remain a premium member until that renewal comes up. So I think there is a gap here. I'm going to note this gap now and then move on to implementation. So we've got I can make a payment, or I can subscribe, and we've got I can stop subscribing, but we haven't got I can remain subscribed. And yes, this is missing. So the payment processor processes a renewal, tells the system which user that was for, everything that I just said. I'm glad I caught that. That's that's the kind of thing that I was sure I would get wrong in doing payment processing in a web app for the first time, and indeed here we are doing it. Here we are getting it wrong. And so now we've got a new use case, renewal. You have to be subscribed with recurring billing. the payment either succeeds or it fails. Either like the expiry date gets moved or they get told to do something. Awesome. So, and now we're getting the updates to the various diagrams. So again, we can quickly see visually that we're considering this use case in the model.